The air in the small apartment was thick with unspoken tension, a familiar hum that vibrated between the two siblings, Alex and Chloe. It was a symphony of their clashing personalities, played out against the backdrop of their shared living space, a testament to their proximity and their profound differences. Alex, at 22, was a creature of meticulous order, his world neatly catalogued and filed, much like the textbooks that lined his side of the cramped two-bedroom apartment near campus. Chloe, his 21-year-old sister, was a whirlwind of vibrant chaos, a living, breathing testament to spontaneity and an utter disregard for anything resembling a schedule or a system. Their apartment was a constant battleground, an invisible line drawn down the middle, separating Alex's pristine sanctuary from Chloe's vibrant, often overwhelming, disarray. His side was a minimalist dream, every item with its designated place, surfaces gleaming with a quiet defiance against the encroaching tide of Chloe's belongings. Her side, conversely, was a joyful explosion of color and texture, discarded clothes forming colorful dunes, half-empty coffee cups standing guard over forgotten books, and an impressive collection of beauty products that seemed to multiply overnight. Alex often wondered how his best friend, Mark, managed to navigate Chloe's world. Mark, a genuinely good-hearted and loyal soul, had been dating Chloe for 8 blissful months. Alex liked Mark immensely, respected his unwavering kindness, and secretly, deeply, believed he deserved someone, well, different. Chloe was undeniably beautiful, with a cascade of fiery red hair and eyes that sparkled with an almost mischievous light. But beneath that captivating exterior, Alex saw a shallowness, an overconfidence that bordered on arrogance, and an all-consuming obsession with her own appearance. He kept these thoughts locked away, however, deeming them disloyal to both his sister and his friend. Mark was happy, and that, Alex reasoned, was what truly mattered. One particularly sweltering Tuesday evening, the usual domestic discord reached a fever pitch. Mark and Alex were engrossed in a particularly challenging boss battle on their gaming console, the rhythmic clicks of their controllers providing a monotonous counterpoint to Chloe's restless fidgeting. She flitted around the living room, a brightly colored blur, occasionally pausing to offer a scathing critique of their chosen pastime. "You two are absolutely insufferable," she declared, her voice laced with an exaggerated sigh as she scrolled through her phone. "Just sitting there, pressing those ridiculous buttons. Don't you ever get bored?" Alex, his gaze unwavering from the screen, grunted in response. "Not everyone needs a constant audience, Chloe." She rolled her eyes, a dramatic flourish of her long, red hair. "Whatever, Alex. At least Mark makes an effort to do real things when we're together." Mark, accustomed to their theatrical bickering, merely chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to smooth the edges of their sharp words. "Play nice, you two," he murmured, his eyes still fixed on the screen, a tiny smile playing on his lips. These little skirmishes had been escalating for weeks, a slow, insidious buildup of resentment. Chloe's makeup seemed to colonize every available inch of the bathroom counter, a vibrant, multi-hued battlefield of powders and brushes. Her clothes, fresh from the laundry, would lie in colorful heaps across the living room, awaiting an arbitrary folding ritual that rarely materialized. And then there were the showers, 40-minute symphonies of steaming water and fragrant soaps, invariably coinciding with Alex's desperate need to get ready for his morning classes. The breaking point arrived with a crash, much like Chloe's discarded laundry basket. Alex returned home after a particularly grueling day of lectures and lab work, his mind buzzing with equations and chemical formulas, only to find their shared living space completely consumed by a veritable Everest of Chloe's clean clothes. Jeans draped over the back of the couch, delicate blouses cascading from armrests, socks strewn across the coffee table like fallen confetti. There was nowhere to sit, nowhere to put his heavy backpack, nowhere to even set down his stack of textbooks. "Chloe," he roared, his frustration finally boiling over. "Can you please deal with your stuff? The entire apartment is not your personal walk-in wardrobe." She emerged from her room, a picture of annoyed innocence, her brow furrowed in a mock expression of concern. "Relax, I'm going to put it away." "When? Next week?" This happens every single time you do laundry. Oh my gosh, you're so dramatic, she scoffed, another eye roll. They're just clothes. They're inconsiderate, Alex countered, his voice rising. I live here too, you know. Yeah, and you're such a perfect roommate, Mr. Everything has a place, she shot back, a flash of genuine anger in her eyes. At least I respect our shared spaces. The argument spiraled, each word a venomous dart, as they dragged out old grievances, replaying ancient battles with fresh ferocity. Finally, exasperated and utterly drained, Alex threw his hands up in defeat. You have no idea what it's like dealing with you. I wish you could see things from my perspective for once. And I wish you'd stop being such a control freak, she retorted, her voice trembling slightly. Bet you couldn't handle my life for one day. Alex laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Trust me, being you looks pretty easy. I'd love to see you try being me. A strange current passed between them then, a sudden, almost palpable shift in the air. For a moment, silence descended, heavy and charged. Both backed down, too weary to continue the futile struggle. Alex trudged to his bedroom, fuming, but assumed, as he always did, that the morning light would dissipate the anger, much like all their arguments eventually did. He couldn't have been more wrong. He woke up disoriented, the unfamiliar angle of the sunlight hitting his face a jarring surprise. His body felt off. Lighter, yes, but also weighted in an entirely new way. He stretched, a lazy, morning gesture, and froze. A cascade of long, silky hair brushed against his shoulders. That was weird, he thought, bewildered. His hair was short, neatly trimmed. He sat up slowly, blinking the sleep from his eyes, and realized with a jolt that he wasn't in his own room. The walls were a pale, almost saccharine pink, not the calming blue of his sanctuary. Clothes were strewn everywhere, a familiar, chaotic landscape. This was Chloe's room. What the he mumbled, but the sound that emerged was not his own. It was higher, softer, undeniably feminine. His heart hammered against his ribs as he looked down at himself. Two unmistakable mounds pushed against the fabric of the nightgown he was wearing. He brought his hands up, disbelief warring with a creeping dread, finding them smaller, more slender, with neatly manicured nails. He scrambled out of bed, tangling himself in the sheets, nearly tripping over his own feet. His center of gravity was all wrong, an alien sensation. He stumbled to the large mirror that covered Chloe's entire door and stared, horrified, at the reflection. His sister stared back at him. No, he whispered, his new voice barely audible, touching his face, his hair, his chest. It was all Chloe. He was in her body. Panic, cold and sharp, seized him. This wasn't possible. He had to be dreaming. He pinched himself hard, the sharp pain a stark reality, but he didn't wake up. He splashed water on his face from a half-filled glass on the nightstand. Nothing changed. The reflection remained the same. A knock at the apartment door made him jump, freezing him in place. Who could that be? He wasn't prepared to see anyone. Not like this. But the knocking persisted, louder now, more insistent. Pulling on a floral silk robe he found hanging on the back of Chloe's door, Alex cautiously made his way to the entrance. Through the peephole, he saw Mark, holding a takeaway coffee and a paper bag that undoubtedly contained breakfast. Before Alex could decide what to do, another door in the apartment opened. He turned and saw himself. His own body, familiar yet terrifyingly alien, staring back at him with a look of pure horror that must have mirrored his own. What did you do? His body demanded, his own voice sounding utterly bizarre coming from someone else. Me? I didn't do anything. Alex, trapped in Chloe's form, retorted. They stared at each other in stunned silence, a surreal tableau, broken only by Mark's persistent knocking. Chloe, Alex, you guys awake? He called through the door, his voice muffled. Don't open it. Chloe, now inhabiting Alex's body, hissed. But it was too late. Alex, acting on pure autopilot, had already turned the handle. Mark stood there, a cheerful smile on his face, which quickly faltered as his gaze swept between the two figures in the doorway. Morning. Everything okay? Mark, they both said simultaneously, their voices an odd, dissonant duet. Something happened, Alex said, his new voice unfamiliar on his tongue, unsure how to begin to explain the impossible. Something impossible, Chloe added, his voice, laced with a tremor. Mark looked confused, his brow furrowed. What's going on? I'm not Chloe. I'm Alex in Chloe's body. And I'm Chloe, his body said, gesturing wildly to itself. In Alex's body. Mark looked between them, waiting for the punchline, for the burst of laughter that would signal the end of this elaborate prank. When none came, he slowly, carefully, set the coffee and bag down on the entry table. Is this some kind of weird joke? I wish, Alex said, his voice tinged with genuine despair. We woke up like this. Swapped. To prove it, they began to recount details only they would know. Alex, in Chloe's body, vividly described the time Mark had accidentally fallen into the lake during their last summer fishing trip, detailing the brand of fishing lure he'd lost and the color of his soggy boxers. Chloe, in Alex's body, described the inscription on the silver locket Mark had given her for their 6-month anniversary, a detail she'd never shared with anyone. Slowly, disbelief gave way to stark, wide-eyed shock on Mark's face. This is insane, he said, his voice barely a whisper, sinking onto their couch as if his legs had given out. How is this possible? We don't know, Chloe said, looking down at Alex's body with a profound look of disgust. But we need to fix it. Mark ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of deep distress. Okay, let me process this. My girlfriend is in my best mate's body, and my best mate is in my girlfriend's body. Pretty much, Alex confirmed, feeling a strange mix of morbid humor and sheer terror. I think I need some air, Mark said, standing abruptly, his eyes wide. This is a lot to take in. You're leaving? Chloe asked, a note of desperation in her voice. Just for a bit, Mark said, backing towards the door. I think you two need some time to figure this out. Anyway, I'll be back once I process all this. Can you please lend me a key for now? He managed a weak, apologetic smile before slipping out the door, leaving them in a silence even heavier than before. After Mark left, Alex and Chloe sat in stunned silence for a while, the reality of their situation slowly, horrifyingly, sinking in. Eventually, practical concerns began to surface, nudging aside the initial shock. I need to get dressed, Alex said, realizing he was still clad in Chloe's revealing nightgown. I can't stay wearing this all day. Use my clothes, obviously, Chloe said, looking profoundly uncomfortable in Alex's larger frame, tugging at the collar of his t-shirt. I need to get changed too. They retreated to their respective rooms, now swapped. Alex, finding himself in Chloe's vibrant, chaotic bedroom, stared at her wardrobe with a growing sense of dread. Everything looked impossibly tiny, revealing, or both. He finally selected what seemed like the most modest options, a pair of dark jeans and a loose-fitting t-shirt. He began to remove the nightgown and, without thinking, caught sight of himself in the full-length mirror. It was jarring, profoundly unsettling, to see his sister's body naked, even though it was technically his now. Her skin was smooth, her waist impossibly narrow, her hips curved in a way his had never been, a stark contrast to his own lean, muscular physique. He was so distracted by the sheer strangeness of it all that he didn't notice the door wasn't fully closed until it creaked open wider. Mark stood there, having apparently returned to retrieve his forgotten keys. Sorry, I forgot my... His voice trailed off, his eyes widening in horror as he took in the sight before him. Alex yelped, a high-pitched, mortified sound, and grabbed for anything to cover himself, ending up with a small throw pillow that did almost nothing to conceal his new form. Get out, he shouted, his face burning with a furious blush. Sorry. Mark stammered, his face a mask of scarlet, backing away quickly and fumbling to close the door. Great, Alex thought, collapsing onto Chloe's unmade bed, burying his face in his hands. My best friend just saw my sister's body naked, except it was me inside it. Could this get any more uncomfortable? After that profoundly humiliating incident, Alex decided a bath might offer some semblance of sanctuary and a chance to clear his reeling mind. He locked the bathroom door with a decisive click, double-checking it, then turned on the taps, watching the water swirl into a fragrant, steamy haven. He carefully, cautiously, lowered himself into the warm embrace of the water. The sensation was overwhelming, a deluge of new and unfamiliar feelings. The water felt different on this body, somehow more sensitive, more encompassing. He tried desperately to focus on practical matters, on the baffling predicament they found themselves in, on a logical path to reverse the switch. But his mind stubbornly refused to cooperate, drawn instead to every new, disconcerting feeling. The way Chloe's long, fiery hair floated around him like a silken halo in the water, the strange, almost ethereal buoyancy of his new breasts, the unfamiliar lightness of his limbs. It was as if his very nerve endings had been rewired, each touch, each sensation amplified. He finished quickly, disturbed by his own heightened awareness of this alien body, the lingering scent of Chloe's floral bath salts almost suffocating. Drying off, he faced his next, equally daunting challenge, getting dressed properly. Back in Chloe's room, he confronted her underwear drawer, a veritable treasure trove of lace, silk, and vibrant patterns. He knew, intellectually, that he needed to put these things on, but the thought felt profoundly invasive, a transgression against an invisible boundary. Finally, practicality, a deeply ingrained part of his own personality, won out over his growing discomfort. He selected what appeared to be the least complicated options, a simple black pair of briefs and a matching bra. Getting the briefs on was straightforward enough, though the feel of the delicate fabric against his skin was undeniably strange. The bra, however, was another matter entirely. After several fumbling, failed attempts, his fingers clumsy and unaccustomed to the delicate clasps, he finally managed to secure it, adjusting awkwardly until everything seemed to be in the right, albeit unfamiliar, place. He looked at himself in the mirror again, feeling a bizarre sense of disconnection. This was his sister's body, clad in her intimate apparel, but it was him experiencing it, the lace feeling both delicate and subtly constricting against his skin. He hastily pulled on the jeans and cotton top he'd selected earlier, but realized too late that Chloe's clothes were far more fitted, far more revealing, than anything he was used to. The top clung to his chest, emphasizing the curves he now possessed, and the jeans hugged his hips in a way that made him acutely, uncomfortably aware of his new form. Every movement felt self-conscious, every glance at his reflection a fresh jolt of unfamiliarity. Days bled into a bewildering week with no solution in sight. Alex and Chloe, a bizarre mirror image of their former selves, immersed themselves in frantic online research, poring over obscure forums and pseudoscientific articles about body swaps. They found nothing helpful, only fantastical fiction and outlandish conspiracy theories. They were stuck, trapped in an impossible predicament. Adapting to Chloe's body was a constant, exhausting challenge for Alex. Her center of gravity was different, making him clumsy and prone to minor stumbles, a stark contrast to his usual athletic coordination. Her hair, a magnificent mane of fiery red, required an elaborate styling routine that baffled him. Her skin, delicate and prone to dryness, demanded a meticulous care regimen he'd never contemplated. And her clothes, oh, her clothes. Each outfit required careful coordination, a sense of fashion he simply didn't possess. He'd never truly appreciated, or even considered, how much effort, how much thought, how much work went into being a woman. Mark, bless his bewildered heart, started visiting more frequently, a confused expression a permanent fixture on his face. He seemed unsure whether to treat Alex, now in Chloe's body, as his girlfriend or his best friend. This created an odd, often painfully awkward, dynamic between them. Sometimes, lost in habit, Mark would instinctively reach out to put his arm around Alex's waist, only to remember the bizarre circumstances and awkwardly pull back, a flush rising on his neck. Other times, Alex would make a joke, a piece of playful banter he'd shared with Mark countless times, only for Mark to look confused when the familiar words emerged from Chloe's mouth, sounding alien and out of place. Meanwhile, Chloe, surprisingly, seemed to be adjusting to Alex's body with annoying ease. She reveled in the newfound physical strength, the simplicity of his wardrobe, the glorious lack of beauty routines. She flexed Alex's muscles in the mirror, marveled at the robust health of his skin, and delighted in the effortless ease of his short, fuss-free hair. It was as if she had discovered a new, simpler mode of existence, leaving Alex to grapple with the complexities of hers. About a week after the swap, Chloe had a night class to attend, one that, ironically, was on Alex's usual schedule. She left him alone in the apartment, pausing at the door to deliver a parting shot. "Try not to break anything in my body, okay?" she said, a mischievous glint in Alex's eyes. Once alone, a peculiar curiosity began to stir within Alex. He felt an almost irresistible urge to explore. He opened Chloe's wardrobe again, this time with the intoxicating freedom of solitude, able to truly look without the constraints of necessity or self-consciousness. There were so many clothes, a kaleidoscope of styles ranging from casually comfortable to strikingly formal, from demurely modest to strikingly revealing. Each outfit, he realized, as he tentatively pulled them out and held them against himself, revealed a different aspect of Chloe's body, now his own. He tried on several, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and fascination. A flowing bohemian skirt made him feel ethereal, almost weightless. A sharp, tailored blazer gave him an unexpected sense of authority. But it was the last outfit he tried, an impulse born of pure, unadulterated curiosity, that truly arrested him. It was Chloe's most revealing, a tiny black dress, cut to cling to every curve, leaving little to the imagination. Looking at the mirror, Alex hardly recognized himself. The person staring back was undeniably attractive, confident in a way that he, as Alex, had never been. The dress accentuated his new figure, the fabric shimmering under the apartment lights, drawing attention to his legs, his cleavage, his bare shoulders. It was confusing, profoundly so. He'd never thought about his sister's body in this way, obviously, never seen it as an object of aesthetic appreciation. But this was his body now, at least temporarily. Was it wrong, he wondered, to appreciate how it looked, to acknowledge the undeniable allure of the reflection? A shiver, not entirely of discomfort, traced its way down his spine. The next few days brought new, even more perplexing complications. Mark was around constantly, his visits no longer just a gesture of support, but something more. Alex noticed him looking at him differently, not just with the initial confusion, but with something else entirely. Something that made Alex's pulse quicken in a way it never had before, a strange flutter in his chest that echoed Chloe's own reactions. It was disconcerting, unsettling, and undeniably thrilling. One evening, they were sitting on the couch, the low hum of the television providing a comforting backdrop to their uneasy silence. Chloe, still in Alex's body, had gone to bed early, claiming that his body needed far more sleep than hers ever had. Mark and Alex were alone, and Alex was acutely, painfully aware of Mark's proximity, the warmth radiating from him, the subtle scent of his aftershave. "Your shoulders are tense," Mark observed, his voice soft, almost a murmur. "Turn around. I'll give you a massage." Before Alex could object, before his rational mind could construct a polite refusal, Mark's hands were on his shoulders, strong yet gentle, working out knots Alex hadn't even realized were there. His touch sent unexpected shivers through Alex, a wave of sensation that felt both foreign and oddly familiar. This body, Chloe's body, responded to him in ways Alex was utterly unprepared for. When Mark's hands moved lower, tracing the line of his spine, Alex felt a warmth spreading through him, a liquid heat that started in his core and radiated outwards. His breathing quickened, becoming shallow, uneven. Certain parts of his anatomy, parts he was still struggling to come to terms with, were reacting in ways he definitely did not want to acknowledge. I should go to bed," Alex said abruptly, almost leaping to his feet, pulling away from Mark's touch. Mark looked confused, his hand suspended in the air. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, just tired," Alex lied, the words tasting like ash in his mouth, retreating hastily to Chloe's room. Lying in Chloe's bed, the unfamiliar softness of the mattress and the scent of her perfumes surrounding him, Alex couldn't ignore what had just happened. This body, his sister's body, had distinct, undeniable physical reactions to Mark, his best friend, his sister's boyfriend. It was wrong on so many levels, a tangled web of taboo and confusion, yet the lingering warmth of Mark's touch, the echo of the shivers, was an undeniable, deeply disturbing reality. Alex avoided Mark for the next few days, creating elaborate excuses whenever he called or showed up at the apartment. He pleaded deadlines, fictional headaches, sudden and urgent study groups, anything to keep his best friend at arm's length. The awkwardness of their last encounter, the unsettling physical sensations, gnawed at him, a constant, low-level hum of guilt and confusion. Chloe, ever perceptive despite her superficial facade, noticed his evasiveness. She confronted him one morning as he was making himself a cup of tea, her reflection in the kettle momentarily mocking him. "Why are you being weird with Mark?" she demanded, his voice, sharper than usual. "He thinks he did something wrong." Alex stirred his tea, avoiding her gaze. "I'm not being weird." And nothing happened. He looked genuinely upset. "What did you do?" she pressed, Alex's eyebrows, furrowed in suspicion. Alex couldn't tell her the truth. How could he explain that her body, now his temporary vessel, had responded so viscerally to her boyfriend's touch, even with him, Alex, inside it? The very thought was mortifying, an unthinkable confession. "Nothing happened," he insisted, his grip tightening on the mug. "I'm just trying to maintain boundaries." It was a flimsy excuse, even to his own ears, but it was all he had. Chloe looked skeptical, her eyes narrowing, but to his immense relief, she dropped the subject. Later that day, however, Alex overheard her on the phone with Mark, her voice hushed, apologetic. "Look, I think it's just hormones, you know? Being in her body, Alex is probably just moody. Don't take it personally." The explanation, while mortifying, was a far better alternative than the truth. He felt a blush creep up his neck, grateful that Chloe, in his own body, was inadvertently protecting his secret. Eventually, Mark, persistent and genuinely concerned, managed to corner Alex alone in the kitchen when Chloe was out at a lecture. The apartment felt too quiet, too intimate, with just the two of them. "What's going on, Alex?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm, leaning against the counter, his arms crossed. "You've been avoiding me for days. Is something wrong?" "It's complicated," Alex mumbled, fiddling with a loose thread on the silk robe he was wearing, unwilling to meet Mark's earnest gaze. "Try me," Mark encouraged, stepping a little closer. Alex sighed, searching desperately for the right words, for a way to articulate the inarticulable. "This body," he began, gesturing vaguely to his new form, "it reacts to you in ways that make me uncomfortable." The words felt inadequate, clumsy, a poor descriptor for the maelstrom of emotions within him. Understanding dawned on Mark's face, a slow realization that spread across his features. "Oh. Yeah. Oh," he muttered, his eyes dropping to the floor. I get it." He paused, then looked up, confusion clouding his eyes once more. "But you're still Alex inside, right?" "I know," Alex exclaimed, his voice betraying his frustration. "That's what makes it so weird. I shouldn't feel anything when you touch me, but this body does." The admission hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Mark was quiet for a long moment, processing. The silence stretched, filled with the hum of the refrigerator and the frantic beating of Alex's heart. "Chloe mentioned something similar," he said finally, his voice soft, almost hesitant. She said she doesn't feel the same about me in your body. She said being in a male form has changed how she sees our relationship." That was news to Alex, a completely unexpected revelation. "She hasn't said anything about that to me." "I think she's embarrassed," Mark said, meeting Alex's gaze, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "Like you are." The tension between them shifted, subtly but profoundly. The unspoken question that had been hanging in the air, a silent, powerful force, suddenly felt palpable. Alex felt his breath catch in his throat, his gaze drawn to Mark's mouth, then to his eyes, searching for an answer to a question he dared not voice. I'm going to avoid getting too graphic here, so I'll use some hangout terms instead, but you know what I mean. They ended up kissing. It started tentatively, a hesitant brush of lips, then deepened, a wave of unfamiliar sensation washing over Alex. It was Mark's kiss, warm and familiar, but his own body was reacting to it with an intensity he'd never experienced. One thing led to another, and suddenly, he found himself kneeling in front of Mark, engaging in what could only be described as a very heart-to-mouth conversation. It was strange, undeniably so, but also wonderfully, terrifyingly new. The feeling of this body responding to Mark's touch, his mouth, his whispered words, was an intoxicating rush. The hidden highlight between his legs throbbed with an unfamiliar sensitivity, a sensation that was both shocking and undeniably pleasurable. When it was over, they sat in awkward silence, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Neither of them knew what to say, the magnitude of what had just transpired hanging between them like a shimmering, fragile curtain. That was. Mark started, his voice a little shaky. Weird, Alex finished, his own voice a breathy whisper. But also. Mark tried again, searching for the right word. Yeah, Alex stopped him, placing a trembling hand on Mark's arm, not wanting him to articulate the confusing, thrilling truth that threatened to shatter their entire world. He confessed everything to Chloe the next day, bracing himself for her inevitable anger, her furious accusations. Instead, she looked at him with a gaze that was surprisingly resigned, almost weary. I've been feeling strange too, she admitted, her voice low, picking at a loose thread on her shirt. Being in your body is changing how I think. I look at Mark and I feel friendship, not attraction. It's like our bodies are influencing our minds. She looked up, her eyes, Alex's eyes, filled with a deep unease. We need to find a way to switch back before things get even more complicated. But complications were already in motion, a snowball rolling down a hill, gathering momentum with every passing moment. After the incident with Mark, a line had been crossed, irrevocably. Alex found himself thinking about Mark constantly, anticipating his visits with a dizzying mix of guilt, apprehension, and an undeniable, thrilling excitement. Chloe's body, his new body, seemed to yearn for Mark's presence, for his touch, for the sensations it had unexpectedly awakened. A few days later, unable to resist the pull, Alex went to Mark's apartment, ostensibly to talk things through. He wouldn't share all the details, but suffice it to say, they had some serious, quality time that evening. For the first time in his life, Alex experienced the grand finale, the overwhelming crescendo of sensation, from a female perspective. It was overwhelming, intense, in ways he couldn't have possibly imagined, a complete recalibration of his understanding of pleasure. Afterward, lying in Mark's bed, the sheets tangled around them, Alex felt profoundly conflicted. This wasn't his life. This wasn't his body. But the experiences felt undeniably real. The sensations genuine. What are we doing? Mark asked quietly, his voice a low rumble against Alex's ear. I don't know, Alex admitted, a profound weariness settling over him. This is so messed up. He paused, then Mark voiced the question that had been lurking in Alex's own mind, a terrifying echo. Are you still Alex in there, or are you becoming something else? It was a question Alex had been afraid to ask himself. Was he still Alex, the logical, organized, practical Alex? Or was Chloe's body, with all its inherent biological and emotional programming, slowly but surely changing who he was, altering his very identity? When he talked to Chloe about it later, she had similar concerns, her own experiences mirroring his. I found a forum, she said, showing him her laptop, the screen glowing in the dim light of her room. Other people who've experienced body swaps. They say there might be a way to reverse it. Alex should have felt relieved, a surge of hope for a return to normalcy. Instead, he felt a strange, unsettling conflict. Going back to his own body would mean giving up these new sensations, these bewildering, intense experiences. It would mean Mark would go back to being just his friend, his sister's boyfriend, a boundary he had unknowingly, irrevocably crossed. "That's great," Alex said, the words feeling hollow, insincere even to his own ears. He didn't sound happy, and he knew it. Chloe, ever the astute observer, even in a different skin, observed, "You don't sound happy." "I am. It's just complicated," Alex answered, his gaze fixed on some distant point. "Because of Mark?" she asked softly, his eyes, searching his face. Alex nodded, unable to articulate the complex tangle of feelings that bound him to this new, confusing reality. "I know," she said softly, surprisingly empathetic. "Part of me doesn't want to go back either. Being you is simpler in some ways." She paused, a wistful look on her face. "But we can't stay like this forever." "Why not?" The question slipped out before Alex could stop it, raw and desperate. Chloe looked at him with genuine surprise, her mouth slightly agape. "You want to stay in my body?" "I don't know what I want anymore," Alex admitted, the confession a heavy weight in the air between them. The line between Alex and Chloe, between friend and lover, between desire and taboo, had blurred beyond recognition. And he wasn't sure he wanted to redraw it. The days that followed were a blur of internal conflict for Alex. The forum Chloe had discovered offered a glimmer of hope, a potential path back to their original selves, but the very thought now filled him with a strange mix of apprehension and longing. Each morning, he woke in Chloe's body, and the initial jolt of unfamiliarity was slowly being replaced by a disconcerting sense of belonging. His clumsiness had lessened. He navigated Chloe's world with greater ease, his new center of gravity no longer a constant surprise. He had even started to grasp the intricacies of her beauty routines, the subtle art of makeup application and hairstyling, finding a strange, almost meditative rhythm in the rituals. He looked in the mirror and no longer saw just his sister's body, but his body, a new, more aesthetically pleasing version of himself, one that elicited different reactions from the world around him. The attention he now received was startling. Men held doors for him, offered compliments, lingered in conversation. Women, sensing a shared femininity, engaged him in a different kind of camaraderie, discussing clothes, relationships, and emotions in a way they never would have with Alex, the stoic male. He found himself enjoying these interactions, the novel experience of being perceived and treated differently. And then there was Mark. Their secret encounters had continued, a clandestine dance between best friends and forbidden lovers. Each time, the initial guilt was quickly eclipsed by the raw intensity of the experience. Chloe's body responded to Mark with an almost primal force, a cascade of sensations that Alex, in his male form, had never known. The grand finale was no longer an abstract concept but a vivid, overwhelming reality that left him breathless, questioning everything he thought he knew about desire and intimacy. Mark, too, seemed to be grappling with his own confusion. Sometimes, in the quiet aftermath of their shared moments, he would look at Alex, deep into Chloe's eyes, and whisper, "Are you really still Alex?" The question was a double-edged sword, both terrifying and oddly validating. Terrifying because Alex wasn't sure of the answer himself, and validating because it acknowledged the profound shift he felt happening within him. Chloe, meanwhile, was experiencing her own bewildering transformation. Being in Alex's body had profoundly altered her perspective. She, who had once been obsessed with her appearance, now found a liberating simplicity in male form. The endless hours spent on makeup, hair, and wardrobe were replaced by a straightforward efficiency. She enjoyed the physical strength, the unburdened movement, the lack of societal pressure to be constantly on display. Her feelings for Mark had also shifted. The intense, romantic attraction she'd once felt was slowly morphing into a deep, abiding friendship. "It's like, I see him differently now," she confessed to Alex one evening, his voice, tinged with a bewildered honesty. "He's still Mark, my best friend, but the spark is gone. I don't feel that same desire. It's like being your brother and seeing him through a brother's eyes." Alex understood completely, a mirror image of her own dilemma. "I know," he said, the words heavy with unspoken meaning. It's like this body has its own memories, its own desires. And they're merging with mine. The forum Chloe had found suggested that prolonged body swaps could indeed lead to a blending of consciousness, where the host body's ingrained personality traits, memories, and even desires could begin to influence the inhabitant. It was a terrifying prospect, the idea of his own identity slowly dissolving, merging with Chloe's. But it was also, he realized with a jolt, curiously appealing. The forum says there's a ritual, Chloe announced one morning, her face, Alex's face, grim. A way to reverse it. But it's complicated. And it has to be done by both people willingly. Alex felt a knot tighten in his stomach. A ritual? What kind of ritual? It involves a shared moment of profound emotional honesty, she explained, scrolling through the archaic text on the screen. And a physical act of mutual release, a symbolic shedding of the borrowed form. It has to be done at midnight, under a full moon, in a place of personal significance. Alex scoffed, trying to mask his apprehension. Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. Well, nothing else has worked, Chloe pointed out, and we can't ignore the possibility. We need to decide if we want to go back. She looked at him, her gaze, Alex's gaze, direct and unwavering. Do you want to go back, Alex? The question hung in the air, a pivotal point in their bizarre journey. Alex looked around Chloe's room, a space that was slowly becoming his own. He thought of the new sensations, the new way he was perceived, the intoxicating connection with Mark. He thought of the simplicity Chloe now experienced in his own body, the newfound freedom from the relentless pressures of appearance. Part of him, the rational, logical Alex, screamed for a return to normalcy, for the comfortable familiarity of his own skin, his own life. But another part, a growing, more insistent voice, whispered of the unknown, of the exhilarating possibilities that this swap had opened up. I don't know, he admitted, the words barely audible. I really don't know. Chloe sighed, a sound of resignation. We can't just ignore it. Things are getting messy. Mark is confused, I'm confused, and you. She trailed off, her eyes studying his face with a new, almost clinical intensity. You're changing, Alex. I can see it. You're not just Alex in my body anymore. Her words struck a chord of truth that resonated deep within him. He was changing. The boundaries of his identity, once so rigid and clearly defined, were blurring, shifting like desert sands in a relentless wind. He felt a newfound empathy for Chloe, understanding the pressures she faced, the emotional landscape she navigated daily. He was beginning to see the world through her eyes, literally and figuratively. And the thought of giving it all up, of returning to his old self, felt strangely akin to a loss. A loss of new knowledge, new experiences, new facets of himself he never knew existed. The ritual, the possibility of reversal, suddenly seemed less like a liberation and more like an ending. We need to talk to Mark, Alex finally said, his voice surprisingly firm. He's part of this too. He deserves to know what's happening, what we're considering. Chloe nodded slowly. You're right. We owe him that much. The decision to involve Mark in their secret, to reveal the full extent of their predicament and the terrifying implications of the blending of consciousness, was a weighty one. It would force them all to confront the impossible truth, to make a choice that would undoubtedly alter the course of their lives forever. But as Alex looked at his sister, trapped in his body, and felt the unfamiliar pull of Mark's presence in his new form, he knew they couldn't face this alone. The lines were too blurred, the feelings too complex, the stakes too high. The air in the apartment was thick with apprehension as Mark arrived that evening. He sensed the gravity of the situation immediately, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a quiet solemnity. He sat on the couch, watching Alex in Chloe's body and Chloe in Alex's body, with a wary patience, an unspoken question in his eyes. We need to talk to you, Mark, Chloe began, her voice, Alex's voice, surprisingly steady. About everything. Alex nodded, taking a deep breath. It's more complicated than we initially thought. He recounted their online research, The concept of a blending of consciousness, the unsettling notion that their identities were slowly merging with their host bodies. He watched Mark's face for a reaction, seeing the initial disbelief slowly give way to a profound disquiet. "So, what does that mean?" Mark asked, his voice low, his gaze fixed on Alex. "Are you still Alex? Or are you Chloe?" "That's the terrifying question," Alex admitted, his new voice trembling slightly. "I feel different. I see things differently. I have Chloe's memories, her ingrained habits, her desires. And this body has its own language, its own reactions that are becoming increasingly mine." He didn't elaborate on the desires, but a quick, knowing glance passed between him and Mark. Chloe then explained the ritual, the arcane requirements for reversing the swap. Midnight, a full moon, profound emotional honesty, and a symbolic shedding of their borrowed forms. She explained the commitment required from both of them, the willingness to truly desire the return to their original selves. "So, the decision is ours," Chloe concluded, looking from Mark to Alex. "Do we try to switch back, or do we stay like this?" Mark looked stunned, overwhelmed. "Stay like this? You mean, you two just live in each other's bodies forever?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of profound distress. "Chloe, you'd be in Alex's body, and Alex, you'd be Chloe." His gaze lingered on Alex, a complex mix of confusion, concern, and something else Alex couldn't quite decipher. Chloe spoke first, her voice firm. "For me, the choice is becoming clearer. I've found a surprising freedom in Alex's body. The lack of constant pressure about appearance, the physical strength, it's liberating. But more than that, my feelings for you, Mark, they've changed. I still care for you deeply as my best friend, as family. But the romantic attraction, it's just not there anymore. It's like my mind, influenced by this body, sees you as a brother, not a lover." She looked genuinely sad as she said it, a stark contrast to her usual flippancy. Mark's face fell, a shadow passing over his features. He nodded slowly, understanding. I felt that too, Chloe. The distance. It's been hard." He then turned his full attention to Alex, a silent plea in his eyes. "And you, Alex? What do you want?" All eyes were on Alex. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. He looked at Chloe, now inhabiting his own familiar form, the body he had inhabited for 22 years. He looked at Mark, his best friend, the man he had secretly, confusingly, fallen for in his sister's body. And he looked at his own hands, small and slender, Chloe's hands, now undeniably his. "This is the hardest decision I've ever had to make," Alex began, his voice barely a whisper. "When we first swapped, all I wanted was to go back. I hated being in Chloe's body. It was alien, uncomfortable, confusing." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But then, slowly, things started to change. I started to understand her world, her struggles, the constant pressures she faced. I started to see the world differently, to be seen differently." He took a deep breath, his gaze meeting Mark's. "And then there's you, Mark. What we've shared. In this body with you. I've experienced things I never thought possible. Sensations, emotions, a connection that is overwhelming. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose this." He gestured vaguely to his new form, to the space between them. "I don't know if I'm still just Alex in here. I feel like I'm becoming a new person. A blend. And that new person, she wants to stay." A stunned silence filled the room. Mark stared at Alex, a myriad of emotions playing across his face: shock, confusion, a dawning realization, and, finally, a flicker of something akin to hope. Chloe, in Alex's body, simply looked resigned, but also, Alex thought he detected, a hint of understanding, even peace. "So you want to stay, Chloe?" Mark asked, his voice still hushed, as if speaking a sacred secret. Alex nodded slowly, a profound sense of clarity washing over him.